Does the Bible teach that the earth is 6,000 years old? There are some evangelical and conservative Christians who say yes, they do believe that the Bible teaches a 6,000-year-old earth. Yet this contradicts the scientific evidence that indicates a vast antiquity to the earth and to life on earth. Yet in the face of this evidence, these Christians are still unwilling to concede because they believe that if they embrace an old earth perspective, it would mean that there are millions of years of animal death prior to the fall of Adam and Eve. And they argue that this impugns God's goodness and undermines the gospel. Is this really the case? I'm joined today by Dr. Ken Keithley, who is a Christian scholar, a professor of theology at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary in Wake Forest, to help unpack this question. Ken, does the Bible teach that there was no animal death prior to the fall?
Well, I think you're right in your introduction, as you said, that this probably is the primary issue why many young earth creationists continue to hold to the young earth position. In fact, I can think of articles written by certain well-known young earth proponents who would say the age of the earth is not the issue. It's death before the fall. And we certainly agree that human death is the result of the fall. And humans were not intended in God's original order to experience mortal death. We were intended to dwell in the garden or in garden-like conditions such that we had access to the tree of life and that we are intended to live forever, as we will in the new heavens and the new earth. So what we find in passages such as Romans chapter 5 and in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, that human death is the result of the fall. And so human death is what has been incurred upon the condition that we have now. Animal death, though, is not something that the Bible presents automatically as something bad or as an evil. In fact, even young earth proponents don't see all types of death as bad. Even they would admit that plant life was consumed prior to the fall, and that's, plants are living things. I think what we have a little bit going on here is the Bambification of our theology. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I think Walt Disney has played an unhealthy role in our thinking about animals. I mean, we've all seen Jiminy Cricket. He's got a conscience. He is Pinocchio's conscience. Well, the fact of the matter is, insects don't even have sentience, much less consciousness. And so it may disturb us and bother us whenever we see the fly being consumed by the spider. It's bothering us a whole lot more than the fly. The fly does not have the same type of awareness, the same type of conscious awareness of what's going on to it in a way that even remotely resembles that of human beings. So death of bacteria, nobody seems to really be too concerned about that. I would argue that death of insects, which overwhelmingly make up the preponderance of living creatures here on the earth, the death of an insect is really not any more significant than, a child's toy breaking. There's just about that level of awareness. They operate entirely through instinct. When we get to the higher living forms, we do struggle. I mean, to see a chimpanzee suffer or a dolphin, because now we're talking about creatures that are very intelligent. I'll concede that that's a little more of a struggle, a little more of a difficulty. But what we find is that throughout the Bible, whenever God in His Word talks about the predator-prey relationship, we find that it's God Himself who gives the prey to the predator. And it's presented, surprisingly by the psalmist, as a good. And so I would argue that whenever it says that God looked upon what He created in Genesis chapter 1, and He said, "Behold, it is very good," He's talking about how it is able now to accomplish His sovereign will. And therefore, that is the good. I do not think that there was a distinct and separate creation that occurred as a result of the fall. Because that's what you'd have to have if you think that at the fall, all predatory animals were transformed into predators as a result of the fall. You're really talking about a distinct and separate creation. The changes would be so substantial. Biblically, exegetically, one cannot find that in the text. I think it's a much more reasonable thing, both scientifically, theologically, and from the text, that animal death predated the fall of Adam.
Do you think animal death prior to the fall undermines the gospel?
No, I do not. I do not. Human death prior to the fall would be problematic because the Bible makes it very clear that when God created Adam and Eve and created them as they were intended to enjoy the unimpeded presence of Almighty God and to live and enjoy Him forever and to be His ambassadors, His stewards, His emissaries here on earth advancing the kingdom. When He says, go forth and multiply, in other words, what He was saying to Adam and Eve is make the whole universe look like the Garden of Eden. You need to think about it. I do think the Garden of Eden was an enclave of special conditions. But the very fact that it was necessary to have a garden lets us know that that which was outside the garden looked very different. And so, no, I don't think it undermines the gospel at all.